Welcome back to the channel, man. Welcome back to the free hour. It's your boy Trevor Turner. We're back with another episode of the free hour ABCs, the ABCs of Tree. Today, man, we're going to be talking about the letter I. We're going to be talking about imagination. I is for imagination. And when we talk about imagination, man, we're not just talking about daydreaming. We're not just talking about seeing things. What we're talking about is how we can utilize the creative power of our minds to transform our desires, to transform our ideas into reality. Okay? When we talk about imagination, we are talking about the workshop of our mind. We are talking about how our subconscious mind either creates or receives plans for the fruition of our desires, of our ideas. So let's jump right in, man. When we talk about imagination, okay, we're going to talk about some different types of imagination today. We're going to talk about visualization. We're going to talk about creative imagination. We're going to talk about synthetic imagination. And then we're going to really talk about what it actually is that the imagination does, what it is that the imagination actually is when it comes to the functions of our mind. So when we talk about the different types of imagination and we talk about these visualization things, what we're actually talking about is scientifically proven things that happen in our brain when we see things mentally. There was a study done. It was three groups of basketball players. They split them up into three groups. One group, they actually shot free throws. They physically shot the free throws. The other group visualized shooting those free throws in their mind. And the other group was a control group. They did nothing. Okay, until the time came to actually, at the end of it, to shoot the free throws to see how much that they were improved. What we saw, or what was seen in that study, is that the groups that shot the free throws and the group that did the visualization of shooting the free throws both improved at roughly the same level. So when we talk about our imagination, when we talk about our visualization, when we talk about our synthetic imagination, when we talk about our creative imagination, we're not just pulling things out of thin air when we talk about imagination. When we talk about imagination, we are talking about putting our mind, our subconscious mind and our active mind and our frontal lobes to use. Okay? So first, we're going to actually start off with visualization. Visualization. The process of visualization activates frontal lobes, areas in your frontal lobes that are actually directly tied to activity and rehearsal of movement. It stimulates brain regions involved in rehearsal of movement, such as the putamen located in the forebrain, and it primes the brain and body for action so that we actually move more effectively. It involves the activation of our motor cortex. It involves the activation of our motor cortex located in the frontal lobe of our brains, both visualizing and doing the movement. So when we talk about visualizing in the most simple of senses, when we talk about visualizing what we're going to do before we do it, when we talk about racers who visualize winning that race, visualize every single step, visualize every single stride until they get to the finish line. When we talk about basketball players, football players, when we talk about people who perform at high levels, they all visualize their victories. They all visualize the actions that they are going to be doing to succeed and to achieve those victories. How can we tie it into us? We can do the exact same thing for all of our activities. That is literally how we can start to perform at a high level. And I'm going to pull this directly from the Miracle Morning. The Miracle Morning, when it talks about the savers, talks about silence, affirmations, visualizations, exercise, reading, and scribing. Visualization is very important because what we can do is we can literally visualize everything that we're going to be doing throughout the day. And it warms us up. It activates those same regions in the brain as if we were doing those activities. So that way, when we get to those activities, when we get to those deadlines, when we get to those meetings, when we get to those assignments, when we get to those things like the video that I'm doing right now, what we've done is we've already primed ourselves. We've already gotten ourselves ready. We've already rehearsed the movement. We've already rehearsed the motion. We've already rehearsed the activity. That is how important and powerful imagination is on a daily basis, on a small basis. When we get into the habit of implementing imagination and visualization in our lives, what we do is we create within ourselves pre-rehearsed conditions, pre-primed activities. By doing something as simple as visualizing what it is we're going to be doing throughout the day. And now we can tie it into implementing new things into our lives. If we're trying to write a book, we can visualize ourselves writing that book. If we are trying to create content or videos, we can visualize ourselves doing those things. When we wake up in the morning, we visualize our day, or before we get to doing it, we can visualize ourselves doing these things. We can visualize ourselves having that energy. We can visualize ourselves going over the scripts that we've created. We can visualize ourselves pouring our heart and soul out onto the page. We can visualize and then manifest ourselves into different and better circumstances. And I know Jim Carrey is huge on this. There are a lot of videos going around about Jim Carrey talking about manifesting himself into roles or into different positions or into different accolades and things like that. And what he did was he used the first step of what he was using is he was using his affirmations, but then he was using the imagination to visualize himself on those movie sets, to visualize himself working with those people, to visualize himself being directed by those people, to visualize himself receiving the praise and the accolades for doing these amazing works. That is what we can start to do with our visualizations. What we can say is, I am going to visualize myself into performing at a high level by visualizing myself on a daily basis, writing, by visualizing myself on a daily basis, creating, by visualizing myself on a daily basis, having a good and positive and healthy relationship with my significant other, with my family, with my kids. I can visualize myself into having a better countenance, a better outlook, a better perspective, a better mood, by imagining those things as being so, by pre-priming and pre-rehearsing myself to have those outlooks, moods, perspectives, those mindset shifts. Imagination is up here. And it ties a lot back into what I was talking about, the 7 habits of highly effective people. When we talk about those private victories, visualization and imagination is one of those things. It helps us to establish our private victories. When we can't see anything but BS, anything but darkness, anything but failure, anything but setbacks, anything but obstacles, what we have to do and what we have to rely on is our imagination. And even just changing the way that I say that, instead of saying we have to do it, we have that to overcome those things. We have our imagination to see different things coming into our lives. We have our imagination to be able to see different outcomes than what we've been seeing before. We have our imagination to see ourselves overcoming, to see ourselves succeeding, to see ourselves getting over failure. We have it. Everybody has this capability. Everybody has this. This is a God-given, implemented. It's something that was in you when you were born. It was created in you. That's why kids use their imagination so much, because every human being is blessed with it. Just somewhere along the way, we let it get beaten out of us. We said imagination wasn't useful to survive, or it wasn't useful to adapt, or it wasn't useful to thrive in this world. But you have to understand that the people who perform at a high level, they never got that memo. They never got that message. They still actively utilize their imagination through visualization, through things like visualization. The next thing that they use, the next thing that all of us have, is creative imagination. Now, when we talk about creative imagination is the part of our imagination that formulates and creates brand new ideas, things that don't necessarily exist already on this earth. Through the faculty of creative imagination, the finite mind of man has direct communication with infinite intelligence. It is a faculty through which hunches and inspirations are received. It is the faculty that all basic or new ideas are handed over or created by man. It is the piece of our imagination that can actually literally tap into the vibrations of other human beings. When we talk about creative imagination, what we're talking about is we're talking about the people who create forms of entertainment. We're talking about the people who create forms of media. We're talking about the people who create brand new types of buildings, or we're talking about the people who created things like us being able to harness electricity, the people who created things like horseless carriages. We're talking about everything on this earth started as an idea, and making that idea into a reality used creative imagination. And it is something that the majority of us have, but it is not something that the majority of us use. To tap into it, we have to be willing to exercise it and flex it, just like a muscle. We have to be willing to go against those directions and instructions that we've received all of our lives, not to use our imagination. Not to think that there are things that we can bring into this world, that we can create into this world, that we can add to this world. Those things come from creative imagination. All right, next is our synthetic imagination. Through this faculty, one may arrange old concepts, ideas, or plans into new combinations. This faculty, it actually creates nothing. It just works with the materials of experience, education, observation, which it's fed. This is the faculty most used by the inventor, with the exception of the genius. I want to talk to you a little bit about the synthetic imagination. So there was a man, and Napoleon Hill talks about this. It was actually in the book Think and Grow Rich. I didn't have time to touch on this story until now. This is the opportunity to touch on it. There was a man named Elmer R. Gates. Elmer R. Gates was a prolific idea man. He utilized both the synthetic and the creative imaginations. And one of the ways he did that is he would go into a soundproof and lightproof room. And what he would do in this soundproof and lightproof room is he would literally put himself he would spin himself up to a higher vibration, and he would visualize every existing piece of an issue or a problem or an item or a material or something that wasn't quite working yet. He would see every piece in his mind, and he would spin himself up to where the missing pieces would actually come to him in his imagination. And what he would do is when he got those hunches, when he got those inspirations, he would immediately turn the light on and start to write. Sometimes he would be writing for hours until these ideas were fully put on the paper. Sometimes they were just as simple as like, oh, that was it. Now, this is somebody that used the synthetic and the creative imagination. One of the ways that we can tap into that, just like how we were able to tap into visualization by thinking about our day and putting our day into our mental picture, is we can think about our plans and our goals. We can think about our problems. We can think about what we think the solutions could be. And what will happen is if we focus on these things in a creative and in a non-destructive mindset, in a mindset of these things are going to be solved. These things are going to be given to me. These things are going to be received, or I am going to add to these things. I am going to create solutions to these things. I am going to be the person who solves these problems. When we think about our problems in those perspectives and in those manners, this is where we will get our methods. This is where we will get our methods. One of the things that Napoleon Hill talks about, and I touched on it a lot when I did my review of Think and Grow Rich, but what he does is he says day and night, we need to think about our desire for what it is that we want to get, what it is that we want to be. And what happens is when we start thinking about that in the faith that it will happen, that's when the imagination, the workshop of our mind, starts to kick in to hand over to us or create the plans that will bring those things into fruition. That is the power of creative and synthetic imagination. And what happens is that we have now scientific proof that when we do our visualization, when we think about standing on that stage and receiving the accolades for this great work that I put into the world, or when we look at the cover of our book that hasn't even been written yet, but when we think about it in our mind and we see the name above the title and we see the number one New York Times bestseller on there, what happens is that is when our imagination starts to kick in and it starts to provide the plans and the steps to make those things, those ideas, reality. That is the real power of our imagination. Not just sitting there and seeing things, not seeing giraffes in space helmets like on that commercial. That is the real power of it. And those are the benefits of it. Enhanced creativity, improved problem solving skills, better mental well-being. So one of the things that I'm going to leave you with is I'm going to offer actionable steps to how we boost our imagination. And it starts with our mindset. What we do is we listen to creative media. We consume creative content like art, literature, and movies that actually spark your imagination. Not things that just contribute to the destructive mentality that humans naturally kind of float on the frequency of nowadays, but consume creative content. And then next, practice mindfulness exercises. And what you're going to do in these mindfulness exercises is you are going to take your destructive thought patterns and you are going to replace them with creative thought patterns. You aren't going to look at something and say, that can't be better. You're going to look at something and say, how can that be better? You are not going to look at something and say, I can't afford that. You are going to look at something and say, how can I afford that? You are not going to look at something and say, I am not capable of creating on that level. You are going to say to yourself, how can I create on that level? You are not going to say, I can't afford to go back to school. You are going to say, how can I afford to go back to school? You're not going to say, I could never pass this class. You're going to say, how can I pass this class? How can I get bigger and more fit? How can I have a better relationship with my significant other or kids? How can I make these things happen? Believing that there is a solution, and your imagination will kick in. And then also I want you guys to find your own imagination triggers. I want you to find people, places, and things that trigger your imagination. Like nature walks, music, conversations with other creative people. You know that music that you listen to and you just get that feeling where you just feel like you're floating in it. where you're just going down the river of this song. And a lot of times it's not even the songs that we like in our normal genre of music, but it might be this one weird song that you listened to one time where it just felt like it took you somewhere. It might be that person that you don't normally talk to, but you talked to one time and it just felt like it took you somewhere. It might be being out in different aspects of nature or looking at different pictures of nature and you just realize it just kind of took you somewhere. Find those imagination triggers and then tap into your desires. Tap into the ideas that you want to create. Tap into those things. Okay? So today we covered imagination. ABC series. Letter I stands for imagination. We covered visualization. We covered how it actually makes things in the brain fire. Then we covered our synthetic imagination, which was how we take pre-existing ideas and formulate them into something else, formulating them into something useful. We talked about creative imagination, how we completely new ideas, completely new concepts, and brought them into the world through creative imagination. And we talked about some of the ways to tap into those things, some of the different mindsets that we need to have. We talked about some of the different reasons to do it. And we talked about some of the ways, some of the different things to do to trigger our imagination. So, thank you very much for watching, man. If you watch this, I appreciate it. If you watch this all the way through to this, I appreciate this because everything that I am doing now, everything that I'm thinking up now, everything that I'm talking about now, everything that has been attracted to me now, everything that I have now was literally a part of my imagination last year. At this point last year, I was in prison. At this point last year, though, I knew that I wanted to be creating content on a consistent basis about these topics. I knew that I wanted to be in school. I knew that I wanted to be working. I knew that I wanted to have my own stuff. I knew that I didn't want to be in certain circumstances, like sober living or like being slammed down and not having a lot of freedom. And what happened was there was a time when I was telling myself, this will never happen. I can't do it. I'm not going to be able to do it because they don't want me to do this. They want me to be in a certain particular situation. And what literally the only thing I changed, and if you don't remember anything else from this video, remember this. Literally the only thing I changed was I just started telling myself that it could happen. And instead of telling myself it can't happen, or I can't do it, or it won't happen, or they won't let me do it, I just started asking myself, how am I going to do this? How am I going to make it happen within that timeline? How am I going to make them let me do this? How am I going to show them that I am worth this? How am I going to show them that I deserve this? How am I going to show them that they need to let me off the leash and do what I'm doing right now? And it all came from my imagination. Those plans came, and I'm following them. Those plans came, and I'm following them. Since October, when I got out, November, I got the Obama phone. I've been doing my stuff. I got the laptop. I've been doing that stuff. I got into school. I've been doing that stuff. I've been writing. I've been doing all of that stuff. I went from the program to the sober living. Now I'm staying with family again, but I have my own room, bathroom. I can go and come as freely as I want. And I'm paying the same amount here that they would have want me to pay at a sober living. I have food. My body is in really great shape. It's in probably some of the best shape I've ever been in my life. My routine is set in stone, my daily routine. I wake up when I want to wake up instead of saying, damn, I wish I could wake up earlier. I go to sleep when I want to go to sleep saying, damn, I wish I could gone to sleep earlier. Or I feel like I ain't got no energy. I have the energy that I need. I have my routine down, and all of this was literally a product of my imagination. And it's going to keep going. It's going to keep going up. And if you want to see it keep going up, make sure you stay tuned for every Monday or Tuesday or whatever the case. It's not always going to be exactly on time, but I'm already been putting it out, but I'm going to be putting out more of these videos every single week. And it's my 5-year transformation plan, or 5 years from now. And those videos will be coming out every single Monday. So you can literally watch how products of my imagination, how products of my desire and ideas that I had come into fruition through nothing other than me saying, how am I going to make this happen? Instead of saying, you know what, I don't know if I can do that, or I can't do that, or I need help. How am I going to make this happen? And of course, since I got my own space, we doing the podcast. The podcast is coming. Parolee Paradise. Be on the look for that. I want it to be the first one to be out in April. I don't know how often I'm going to be able to do it, but I've already told myself, how am I going to make this happen? And plans and circumstances and ideas have already started to materialize. Power of imagination. Visualize and attack. Hey, man, thank you for watching the free hour. Thank you once again. It's your boy, Trevor Turner. It's your boy, Tree. And once again, this has been the ABCs. I for imagination. See you next week.